with the Knicks making some moves to free up some cap space for potentially signing Jalen Brunson, do you think that the Knicks are going to be able to sign Jalen Brunson away from the Dallas Mavericks this offseason?
The bias in me wants to say no, but I do know that money talks in this league. I do know for a fact that Jalen is in a massive contract year. He played the best year of his career last season, and I think that he may want to capitalize on this opportunity to cash out. Uh, we all know that Dallas doesn't necessarily have the funds that New York would in terms of being able to give him as much as he would like on a yearly base. But it kind of all just depends on what Nico Harrison's going to be able to do. Now, if I were to take my bias aside, I would say absolutely, because the Knicks are looking to offer him anywhere from $25 to $28 million per season. They have hired his father as an assistant coach on the staff. Not to mention, they have cleared so much room on the roster and in their, like, I guess, on the books for financial purposes to acquire Jalen. They have made this the center focus of their offseason. I can't even speak today. They have made Jalen the top priority this offseason to acquire in free agency. And I think that Jalen is going to respect that. I think Jalen's going to like that. I mean, I don't know what player wouldn't. And it's obviously going to be a big, massive pay scale. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it, but low key, I don't know if he deserves the entirety of a 28 a year, $27 million a year contract. I was under the impression 18, 20, maybe 22 max. But for you to go upwards of almost 30, kind of crack in that realm of $30 million, to me, that's a little excessive. I mean, the man averaged 16 points, four or five assists. Wait, hold on. I actually have it right here. I'm acting like I'm trying to remember off verbatim. 16 points, 4 assists, or 5 assists, 4 rebounds. He shot 50% from the field, 37% from three. So it's not like Jalen can't produce, but people have to remember this was while playing alongside Luka Doncic. This was while everybody was doubling Luka. He was able to roam free. This is while he was able to lead the second unit in a lot of instances when Luka would step off the floor. This is while our system was focalized between a lot of isolation plays and penetrating at the paint, a lot of threes. I don't necessarily know if Tom Thibodeau is going to allow him to have the freedom, the free reign, because of Julius Randle, because of the development of RJ Barrett. To me, he's going to end up being a definite third fiddle. At least on Dallas, he's for sure the second, because outside of Spencer Dinwiddie, there isn't another person that's going to be able to take the shots away from Luka Doncic or Jalen Brunson. So to me, it's not a good fit. You're going to go to a worse team. You're going to be in the process of rebuilding. Obviously, we already know New York is not going to be anywhere near competitive because we don't necessarily know what they're going to do with the remaining roster spots that they have. But in terms of Jalen Brunson and the possibility of him going to New York, I would have to say percentage-wise, and this is me being realistic, I would say it's probably a good 50-50 split for me because I've seen reports from Dallas beat writers that say it's almost a guarantee that once free agency opens, it's definitely going to be Dallas first. And the other reason I would say 50 is because money, and Dallas has been known to drop the ball free agents in the past. If for whatever reason we can't agree to a number, he's going right to New York. And I think that he deserves to get paid. And if he does leave, I'll always love Jalen Brunson. So no hard feelings to him to chase the bag. He's young, and this is what you got to do at this age.
Well, when I look at it from the Knicks' perspective, they're definitely going to overpay for Jalen Brunson here. And I think that's just to kind of get him away from Dallas. And I think they're kind of looking at it from a perspective of we are willing to overpay so that we don't lose out again. Because let's be real here for a second. I mean, obviously, one of the biggest things that they are planning to do so far is re-sign Mitchell Robinson. Looking at a 4-year deal, around $60 million. That's basically what the reports are saying that Mitchell Robinson is going to re-sign for. Well, let's look at the DeJounte Murray trade. The Knicks were involved for Murray, and they struck out on that one. And I remember I was going over some New York Post articles, and they were kind of focusing on that Murray trade. And they were of the mindset that was one of the marquee players that the Knicks were looking at this offseason, and they really wanted to get Murray into the fold had they been able to land a trade for him. Unfortunately for the Knicks, he goes to the Hawks, and that ship has sailed. So to me, when it comes to Leon Rose, when it comes to really the Knicks front office right now, all of their attention, I think, is focused on Jalen Brunson. And they are willing to literally bend over backwards as far as giving him a contract to possibly even bring him in. Now, with that said, that doesn't guarantee anything. The Knicks have been one of those franchises that have just been snake bitten when it comes to bringing in free agents into the fold in the past. I mean, for God's sakes, they weren't willing to offer Kevin Durant a max contract because they were actually worried about his health long term. And he ends up signing with a team that's across the river with the Brooklyn Nets. And then when I look at a situation with Jalen Brunson, like Kevin had just kind of outlined, I mean, essentially, the Knicks are willing to offer him around $25 million a year for him. Now, I like Jalen Brunson. I think that Jalen Brunson is a solid player. But $25 million for a player that really only averages around 15 to 16 points per game, I think that's a little bit high. Even for me, like if I was sitting in a front office position, I mean, granted, I know you have to kind of overpay to basically entice somebody to come to a new city to play for you. But if I were the Knicks, I would look at what the Dallas Mavericks are offering Jalen, and pretty much from what I've seen with what Dallas is offering, I think Dallas was offering around $85 million. Kevin, you can correct me if I'm wrong with any of these numbers, but that was the basic number that I saw as far as what the Mavericks were able to
Yeah,
offer.
the initial one, and I know for a fact that Nico Harrison is. Sorry, I moved the mic. I think that Nico Harrison is moving pieces and assets around, and obviously, with the trade for Christian Wood, I don't know what that's going to do to us on the books. But the initial offer, from what I had heard, was somewhere around the 80 to 85 million for sure.
So, to kind of buffer off of that point, I think if you're the Knicks, I think even just like $100 million may be like a better number, because then at that point, you're paying him around 20 million a year. Once you start getting up into like 110, 115 mil, I mean, you're getting close to 25 mil for somebody who I would look at as like a solid player, but he's not a number one. I think at best, with what New York would use him, he'd be a number two. It's just that I think the thing with the Knicks is that they always kind of tend to strike out when it comes to getting the free agents that they want. And they always have to kind of settle with basically like their third or fourth option that they were originally planning for. They can never really get that top guy that they had their sights on in the offseason when it comes to free agency. And I think in this case, even if the Knicks were to bring in Jalen Brunson, do I think that he changes like the entire landscape for the Knicks? No, I don't. I think that he's a solid player. I think he could contribute at decent clips for them. But to me, the way that I see the Knicks right now is they're still a young team that's in a development stage. RJ Barrett is still developing. Julius Randle is coming off of a year where, let's face it, he was very frustrated throughout most of the year. He was getting frustrated with teammates. He was getting frustrated with some of the coaches. And it really wasn't that good of a year for Julius. And, granted, they have some young players to work with. They have Emmanuel Quickly. They have Obi Toppin. But those guys are in their development stage right now. Those guys still have a long way to go in their respective NBA careers where they could produce at the clip that the Knicks need them to be able to be a viable team in the Eastern Conference. So, even if they were to bring in Jalen Brunson, I think it may move the needle slightly for them, but does it move them in a way that they're going to be a significant force in the Eastern Conference? No. And I think it would just be utterly hysterical if Jalen Brunson were to re-sign with the Mavericks, despite the fact the Knicks would be willing to overpay $30 million in this specific instance. I think that would just kind of be like the Knicks MO. It really doesn't matter how much the Knicks are willing to offer. They just can't bring in the guys that they want to. If that were the case, if Jalen were to resign with the Mavs, I just think there's a lot of pressure on Leon Rose to get Jalen. They obviously missed out on Murray with him getting traded to Atlanta. And I think if they miss out on Jalen, and the best thing that you have to show for in this offseason, granted, obviously some other things will go down in the offseason, but if Mitchell Robinson is going to be like your big signing this offseason, that really shows the state of the Knicks. And it really is just kind of a continuation of who they are as an organization. Just an incompetent franchise from top to bottom. And we'll see what happens with Jalen. We'll find out in the next couple days or so. But there's a lot riding for Leon Rose here to get this deal done with Jalen. And time will tell when it comes to whether or not that they could see it through. But there's a lot of pressure on Leon to get this done. I'll just leave it at that.